The galaxy was wide, ancient, and full of secrets. But for thousands of years, the great empires believed they had mapped and mastered it. They thought they knew every signal, every race, every ship that moved between the stars. The Council of Worlds, a mighty gathering of alien civilizations, watched the void with powerful eyes and felt safe behind fleets that had not been challenged for centuries. But on one quiet day, deep on the edge of explored space, the safety of the galaxy was shaken by something no one expected. The strange signal came first faint, broken, impossible to identify. At first, the Council's observers thought it was only background noise, a dying star's whisper, or the lost echo of some forgotten probe. But then the signal grew stronger. It pulsed in patterns, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of something alive. The scanners reported movement, and not random drift. It was deliberate, sharp, steady. Something huge was moving toward known space, and it was moving with purpose. The first fleet sent to investigate was small. It's only a group of scout ships from a lesser empire. To them, it was supposed to be an easy mission, just another curiosity to record. They flew into the black void with chatter and confidence, expecting a ghost. Perhaps an old derelict ship that had lost its crew long ago. As they approached the coordinates of the strange pulse, their laughter turned to silence. The shape appeared first, dark against the starlight. A vessel, massive in size, larger than most of their warships, drifting as if asleep. Its hull reflected no colors of known designs, no marks of the Council, no patterns of the old empires. It looked alien even to aliens. The scouts circled it carefully, their scanners trying to pierce the thick armor. But something was wrong. Every time they tried to read its systems, their computers glitched. Their screens filled with static, and their sensors failed to lock on. It was as if the ship was wrapped in shadows, resisting their eyes. Then one of the scouts made a discovery that sent fear through their ranks. On the dark hull, barely visible, were markings burned in white metal. The translators struggled to decode it, but when the words finally flashed on their screens, the crew fell silent. It was only one word: human. None of the alien scouts had ever heard it before, but the sound of it felt strange, sharp, almost threatening. It carried weight, like a forgotten name from a dangerous legend. For long minutes the scouts watched, waiting for the ship to move, but it remained still, silent, watching them as much as they watched it. Some whispered it was abandoned, a drifting relic. Others felt their skin crawl, certain that something was awake inside, observing them with patient eyes. The commander of the scouts sent a signal to the Council, reporting the discovery. The Council chambers, far away on a shining world, erupted into chaos when the message was played. An unknown ship, armored for war, carrying strange markings, sitting at the very edge of their space. The empires demanded answers. Who built it? What was its purpose? Why had it arrived now? Scholars argued it was impossible, for no known civilization could design such a vessel in secret. Its scale, its silence, and the strange way it resisted. Scans suggested a power they had never seen before. Back at the edge of space, the scouts tried again to communicate. They sent polite hails, greetings in every language stored in the Council's archives. They waited for minutes, then hours. No answer came. The dark ship did not blink, did not turn, did not fire. It simply waited, drifting like a predator before the strike. The scouts began to grow restless. Fear crept in. One of them swore he saw lights shift deep inside the warship, as if something ancient was waking up after a long sleep. Then it happened. Without warning, the ship moved. Engines roared to life, not with the soft glow of alien craft, but with a burning light that seemed violent, raw, alive. The warship turned slowly, its massive frame moving with the smooth grace of something built not for beauty, but for survival. Every alien on the scout ships felt it in their bones. This was not a ship built for trade, or for exploration, or for science. This was a warship, a true warship, designed for one purpose only. The scouts scrambled, sending emergency warnings to the Council. The unknown ship was not dead, not abandoned. It was alive, awake, and powerful. The closer it came, the more they realized the scale of its weapons. Turrets lined its hull, missile bays larger than entire alien frigates, strange long barrels that looked like they could shatter moons. Every detail of the design screamed one thing: destruction. And yet it still did not fire. It only approached, silent except for the deep growl of its engines. A council, watching through live transmissions, argued furiously over what it meant. Was it a threat? A test? A messenger? Why had it not spoken? Why had it not attacked? The oldest of the alien leaders whispered their fear that perhaps this was only one ship, a scout of its own kind, and more would follow. On the bridge of one scout vessel, the alien crew sat frozen as the massive warship drifted closer, its shadow falling over them like a mountain blocking the sun. Their captain's claws trembled on the controls. He whispered to his crew, "It is watching us. It knows we are here." And though the humans had not yet spoken, though no weapons had fired, every alien on those ships felt the same heavy truth. They were no longer the hunters of the stars. Something else had come. Something stronger. Something human. The galaxy waited in silence. Every screen in the Council of Worlds, every transmission hub across the empires, stayed locked on the mysterious human warship. The scouts still floated near it, small and fragile compared to the massive vessel that now cast its long shadow across the stars. The first signal had been strange, but what followed was stranger still. For the first time in centuries, the empires faced something they did not understand. Something that refused to fit into their carefully built order of power. The silence of the warship was almost worse than any attack. It said nothing, fired nothing, made no gesture of peace or threat. It only existed, heavy and overwhelming, like a storm that had not yet broken. The council demanded answers from the scouts. The alien captains reported in, their voices shaking as they described the terrifying size of the vessel. They spoke of weapons larger than their ships, of engines that glowed like molten suns, and of armor that their scanners could not even penetrate. "It feels alive," one scout whispered through the comms, unaware that his voice was being heard across the council chambers. "It is watching us. I know it," the councilors argued furiously. Some wanted to send their fleets immediately, to surround the intruder before it reached the inner systems. Others demanded restraint, warning that to fire first at such a vessel could doom them all. Back near the warship, the scouts tried again to open communication. They sent greetings in more languages, they flashed signals and light, even old coded pulses used by long-dead races. Still, there was no answer. The ship turned slowly, adjusting its path, and for the first time its true direction became clear. It was not drifting aimlessly. It was moving toward Council's space strait, toward the heart of the Empire. Panic spread across the alien crews. Some begged their commander to retreat, to leave before the warship decided to act. But orders were orders. The scouts had to remain close, to study it, to observe. The alien commander's mandibles clicked nervously as he gave the signal for one ship to attempt a closer approach. Against the will of its frightened crew, the small vessel edged forward, its engines trembling with every burst. The warship loomed larger with each passing second until its dark hull filled the screens. The closer they came, the more they noticed. Strange markings, numbers, and letters ran across its surface. The Council's translators struggled with the human language, but one phrase appeared again and again in their reports: United Earth Navy. None of the aliens had ever heard those words before, but something about them carried a weight that made them uneasy. Then, for the first time, the warship responded. A single burst of energy flared across the void, not a weapon but a signal. The scout ship froze in place, its crew stunned as their screens filled with lines of coded data. It was not like anything they had seen before, sharp, precise, filled with patterns their machines could not understand. The alien technicians scrambled to decode it, but the language resisted them, twisting and breaking their algorithms. To them, it was like listening to thunder and trying to find words inside the storm. One thing, however, became clear. The signal was not a greeting. It was a warning. The scout's captain felt his spine stiffen as the message repeated again and again. Even though the translation was broken and full of gaps, one part became painfully clear in every cycle. The humans were not asking for peace. They were telling them to stay back. The alien commander relayed the discovery to the council, and the great chambers once again erupted with noise. Many counselors shouted that this was proof of hostility. A ship that warned others away could only be a threat. But some voices urged caution. They asked the question none wanted to consider: what if this was not their main fleet? What if this was only the beginning of something greater? Meanwhile, the scouts grew restless. The warship's engines thundered louder, and its massive frame moved with speed no vessel of its size should have had. It was pushing deeper into council space. The alien commander had a choice: retreat or stand his ground. But before he could decide, the warship acted again. In an instant, its weapon systems came alive. Massive barrels rotated, missile hatches opened, and the void lit with deadly light. The scouts cried out in terror, thinking this was the end. But the weapons did not fire at them. Instead, they unleashed their fury at empty space. In seconds, the warship destroyed a field of ancient debris drifting in the void. The blast shattered asteroids and vaporized old wrecks, the sheer force of its guns shaking even the scout ships from far away. When the silence returned, the message was clear. This was not a demonstration for battle. It was a display of power. The scouts trembled as they recorded everything, transmitting the shocking images back to the council. Never had they seen such destructive power from a single vessel. One alien whispered that was not a warning. That was a promise. The warship continued its path, engines burning like fire, ignoring the scouts as if they were nothing more. Then dust in its way? In the council chambers, fear began to outweigh pride. Entire empires that once believed themselves invincible now felt a shadow on their hearts. If one human warship could do this, what would a fleet of them look like? Where had they been hiding? Why reveal themselves now? The debates grew louder, but none had answers. All they knew was this: the warship was coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop it from reaching its destination. And somewhere deep inside the dark human vessel, hidden behind walls of steel and silence, the crew finally stirred. Monitors lit up, voices echoed in English, and a captain gave orders in a calm, firm tone. The humans had seen the aliens. They had measured them. They had made their decision. The first contact had turned cold. The council chamber had never been so loud. Voices clashed like weapons, each empire shouting its own truth into the storm. The news of the human warship had spread across every system, filling the minds of billions with fear and unease. On the widescreens, the recordings from the scout ships played again and again: the sudden ignition of weapons, the destruction of debris fields, the silent march of the colossal vessel deeper into their space. No alien could watch without feeling the weight of its presence. That single act of power had struck the galaxy like a hammer blow. But what to do about it, that was the question ripping the council apart. The representatives of the stronger empires called for war. Their leaders stood tall, mandibles snapping, voices rising above the chaos. "We must show strength," one cried. "If we let this invader pass unchecked, our people will see us as weak. What will happen if more of these ships follow?" His words carried the force of fear, but also of pride. The empire he served had fought countless battles, had crushed rivals before. To retreat without a fight now would stain their honor. Around him, many nodded in agreement. They too feared the message the humans might be sending, that they could move freely across the stars, unchallenged, unstoppable. But other voices urged caution. The smaller empires, the ones who had always lived under the shadow of greater powers, trembled at the thought of battle. "You saw what that one ship did?" said a frail representative, his many eyes darting nervously. "You saw how easily it shattered rock and metal. If that power turned on us, whole fleets would vanish in moments. Do you not see? If we attack and fail, it will be the end of us all." His words earned sneers and laughter from the stronger races, but there were many in the chamber who agreed silently. afraid to speak too loudly. At the center of the storm sat the High Speaker, the one tasked with keeping the council in order. His deep voice rose, silencing the chamber with effort. "We face an unknown," he said. "One vessel, yet stronger than anything we have seen. We cannot decide with rage or with fear. We must decide with wisdom." But even as he spoke, his hands gripped the table tightly, betraying his own unease. He too had seen the recordings. He too had felt the cold dread that filled the room whenever the human ship appeared on screen. Back in the scout fleet, tension grew unbearable. The alien crews had been ordered to shadow the warship, to keep recording, to stay close enough to see, but not close enough to provoke. Every moment was torture. They could see the human vessel ahead, silent, steady, ignoring them completely. Some wondered if it even cared they were there at all. Its engines roared like a beast's heartbeat, carrying it ever deeper into council territory. The scouts spoke quietly among themselves, their voices hushed, as if afraid the ship might hear them. "What if it doesn't stop?" one whispered. "What if it goes all the way to the capital?" another muttered back. "Then the council will have no choice but to fight." The council's debates grew darker as reports came in. Every system the warship passed sent signals of alarm. Civilian traffic was cleared from its path. Merchant vessels fled routes that had been used for centuries. Planets whispered of evacuation plans. The presence of one human warship was already changing the galaxy. The counselors knew this, and they felt their power slipping through their claws. They had always been the rulers of this galaxy, the keepers of order. But this ship, this human creation, made them feel like children before a storm. Finally, one of the fiercest voices in the chamber slammed his fist against the table. His spines rattled as he roared, "We cannot sit and watch. I propose we assemble a fleet at once. We will surround this intruder, force it to stop, and demand its surrender. If it resists, we destroy it. That is the only path." His words sparked cheers from the warlike empires. For a moment it seemed his proposal would carry the day, but then another voice rose, calm and steady, belonging to an older representative, whose species had seen many wars. "And if we fail?" he asked softly. The chamber quieted. "If this vessel destroys our fleet before the eyes of all, what then? Do we invite the humans to see us broken? Do we give them reason to march on? Us, believing we are nothing but insects before their boots." The silence that followed was heavy. No one wanted to admit it, but the old one spoke the truth. To fight and lose would be worse than to do nothing. Yet to do nothing felt like surrender. The council found itself trapped between fear and pride, neither strong enough to decide. Meanwhile, the human warship showed no sign of slowing. The scouts reported that its engines burned hotter now, carrying it faster toward the heart of council space. Its weapons still glowed faintly, as if ready to unleash at a moment's notice. The aliens aboard the scouts began to break. Some begged to flee, to abandon their duty before they were destroyed. Others argued that if they left, they would shame their empires. In the end, they remained unwilling but bound by orders. They were flies following a lion, waiting for its tail to crush them. Back in the council chamber, the shouting resumed. One side demanded action, the other begged for restraint. Voices cracked with anger, others with terror. Finally, the High Speaker stood again, his shadow stretching across the room. "Enough," he thundered. "We cannot stay divided. We will act but carefully. We will send a fleet to meet this intruder. Not to fight, but to surround. We will demand its purpose. If it answers, we will listen. If it refuses, then we will show our strength. This is our path," the counselors murmured. Some satisfied, others doubtful. But the decision was made. Across the galaxy, fleets were called from their stations. Warships gathered, commanders prepared, engines roared to life. A force unlike any in living memory began to assemble, all for the purpose of confronting a single vessel. And yet far away in the cold dark, the human ship continued its steady course, its crew watching quietly from behind walls of steel. They saw the scouts, they saw the transmissions, they knew fleets were gathering, but they did not slow. They did not turn. They only moved forward, as if the entire galaxy's fury meant nothing to them. The Council had chosen to divide, but the humans had already chosen their path, and soon those paths would collide. The fleet was a storm across the stars. Hundreds of ships pulled from distant patrols, carriers summoned from fortified systems, cruisers stripped from border defenses. They gathered in silence at the Council's command, forming a wall of steel and firepower in the void. The alien admirals called it the Shield of Unity, but even as the fleet assembled, doubt rippled through their ranks. No one had ever seen a human vessel before. No one knew what this ship truly wanted, yet here they were, preparing to block its path, to surround it, to force a question upon it that might ignite war. On the command bridge of the flagship, the Grand Admiral studied the projection before him. The human warship moved forward like a spear cutting the dark, steady and relentless. It had ignored hails, ignored warnings, ignored the scouts buzzing around it like insects. Its silence was almost worse than aggression. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in unease as he turned to his officers. "It will not turn aside," he said grimly. "Then we will make it." Words were confident, but his stomach twisted. He remembered too well the recordings, the ease with which the human ship had blasted debris into dust. And if it could do that so casually, what could it do when cornered? The scouts, relieved at last, broke away as the Council fleet arrived. Their small vessels darted back to safety, leaving the warship in the hands of greater powers. The warship did not react. Its engines burned at the same pace, its guns pointed into the void, unmoving. It did not even acknowledge the fleet's presence. This silence made every commander uneasy. Enemy ships usually probed, tested, tried to communicate. This one did nothing. It simply advanced as though the galaxy itself were beneath its concern. The fleet spread wide, forming a crescent around the human vessel. Carriers released their swarms of interceptors, thousands of fighters filling the space ahead like a living. Shield cruisers moved into flanking positions, their cannons locked. The Admiral gave his orders through calm tones, but each officer who repeated them did so with dry throats. No one wanted to be the one to fire first. No one wanted to be the one to provoke a beast they did not understand. At last, the hail was sent. Across the channels, the voice of the High Speaker himself echoed. "Unknown vessel, you move through Council territory without permission. You will power down your engines. You will state your origin and purpose. If you do not comply, you will be treated as hostile." The message repeated in countless languages, broadcast on every frequency. The fleet waited. Silence answered. Seconds stretched into minutes. Tension clawed at every ship. The human warship gave no reply. Its hull reflected the light of alien suns, its weapons still glowing faintly. It looked almost alive, like a predator pretending to sleep. Whispers moved through the ranks of the fleet. Some said the humans could not understand. Others said they were mocking the Council. A few feared something worse that the humans were. Listening and simply choosing not to answer. The Admiral clenched his claws, his patience fading. "One more warning," he ordered. "Closer formation." "Push it to respond." The fleet obeyed. The crescent tightened, ships drifting forward, weapons humming. Fighters swarmed closer, scanning every surface of the strange vessel. Still there was no reply. Then suddenly movement. Not a turn of the ship, not a burst of weapons, but a single light flashing along its side. It pulsed once, then vanished. The fleet froze. Was it a signal? Was it a warning? Before anyone could answer, the warship's engines roared louder, pushing it directly toward the heart of the crescent. The Admiral's spines bristled. "Hold position," he barked. "Do not fire unless fired upon." His words steadied the officers, but not their hearts. To stand still as a giant marched into their lines felt like madness. The human ship pressed forward, its massive bulk casting shadows across smaller frigates. Its weapons glowed brighter now, but still it did not fire. Every alien gun locked. On it, every missile bay opened. Every fighter circled like nervous birds around a predator. The silence was unbearable. Finally, a nervous commander on the flank shouted across the channel, "It is ignoring us. It will break our formation. Panic rippled. Some ships moved back without orders. Others edged closer. The admiral shouted. Commands to steady them, but discipline wavered. Fear spread faster than logic. And then, in an instant, the silence shattered. The warship's side erupted not with weapons, but with a transmission. A voice deep and sharp cut across every frequency in the Council fleet. It spoke in perfect translation, as though it had always known their languages. Stand aside. Just 2 words. No explanation. Just a command delivered with the weight of a storm. The voice carried no anger, no desperation. It was calm, almost cold, as if it had already decided the outcome. The Council fleet recoiled in shock. To hear their own tongue spoken by this stranger was unsettling enough. Hear such blunt arrogance was worse. The admiral's mandibles ground together. His pride burned at the insult. But his fear whispered louder. If those words came from such power, perhaps it was no bluff. He glanced at the projections so many ships. So much firepower, but all of it pointed at one vessel that did not fear them. The chamber back on the Council's homeworld erupted when the transmission reached them. Half the representatives shouted, "To strike, to crush this insolence before it spread." The other half shouted to yield, to let the vessel pass and avoid catastrophe. But in the dark space where the fleets faced one another, the decision belonged to the admiral. His claws hovered over the command seal that would unleash everything. Fighters buzzed, guns glowed, missiles primed. The human warship drifted closer still, its voice repeating once more, "Stand aside." This time, the words seemed heavier, sharper, carrying the promise of destruction if denied. The admiral's heart pounded. The choice hung in the void, a blade balanced on the edge of silence. One order, one spark, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence of the fleet was like a storm about to break. Every ship stood ready, weapons humming, shields glowing, crews holding their breath. The human warship had spoken only 2 words. Stand aside, but those words carried more weight than 1,000 threats. No alien captain had ever faced such a moment. They had the numbers, they had the firepower, they had the unity of dozens of worlds at their back. Yet, in the presence of this single warship, their courage felt fragile, like glass waiting for a hammer's fall. On the flagship bridge, the Grand Admiral's claws hovered above the command seal. One order would unleash a wall of firepower, unlike anything seen in generations. Fighters would dive, cruisers would strike, carriers would vomit swarms of death into the dark. And yet he hesitated. He could feel it, the unshakable weight of the human vessel's silence, its steady pace, its utter lack of fear. It was as though the warship had already measured them, already decided what they were worth. And perhaps it had found them wanting. The fleet crackled with panic. Captains barked conflicting orders. Some wanted to strike first before the human vessel could act. Others demanded they hold steady and not risk provoking it further. The formation wavered, discipline fraying like rope under strain. The admiral's voice thundered across the channels, forcing silence. Enough. We will not be remembered as cowards, nor as butchers. This vessel will answer us sore. It will feel the strength of the Council. His words steadied the fleet, but only barely. Fear still moved like fire through dry grass. The warship advanced, drawing nearer to the heart of the crescent formation. It showed no sign of slowing. Its engines burned brighter, its hull shimmered with strange fields. Fighters swarmed around, it like wasps circling a predator. Scans came back in fragment shields too strong to measure, weapons too advanced to map. The more they probed, the less they understood. And then, without warning, the admiral gave the order. Fire warning shots. Make it stop. Dozens of cruisers obeyed at once. Bolts of energy tore across the void, streaking bright lines toward the warship. Explosions bloomed near its hull, shaking space itself. The warship did not dodge, did not flinch, did not answer. It kept moving, calm and relentless. The warning shots burned out against invisible defenses, leaving not even a scratch. The admiral's stomach twisted. Such power could shrug off A storm like that? What chance did they truly have? Second order followed. Prepare full barrage. The words came like a knife, splitting the tension. Crews across the fleet locked onto the warship, every cannon armed, every missile primed. The air on countless bridges was thick with dread. They were seconds away from plunging the galaxy into war. The countdown began, and then, before the final order could fall, the warship answered. Not with words, not with a volley, but with fire. A single cannon flared on its side. The beam ripped across the void, bright as a newborn star. It did not aim for the fleet directly. It struck an asteroid drifting near the battle lines. The rock shattered instantly, disintegrating into dust. Not fragments, not chunks dust, spread thin across the void like smoke. Oh, not. One asteroid, heavier than a frigate, erased in a single strike. Every ship froze. Crews stared in horror at the empty space where the asteroid had been. The silence after that blast was heavier than any roar. The warship had not fired to destroy them. It had fired to show them what it could do. One shot, one message. This is your future if you stand in my way. The admiral's claws trembled above the seal. His pride screamed at him to fight, to prove. The unity of the council was not so fragile. But his mind whispered the truth. One ship had just demonstrated power that rivaled an entire fleet. To push further was suicide. Around him, captains begged for orders. Some demanded retreat. Some begged to unleash everything at once. All eyes turned to him, and then, as though to press the choice harder, the warship's voice returned. Calm, cold, final. Last warning. Stand aside. This time, there was no doubt. The voice carried the promise of death behind it. No more patience, no more restraint. The warship had spoken its language. Fire. The fleet wavered. Some ships began to drift back, their captains unwilling to risk annihilation. Others held their positions out of pride, afraid to show weakness. The crescent shape fractured, no longer unified. Fear had broken their perfect line, and in the center of it, the human vessel moved like a predator, pushing through a herd, daring them to test its teeth. On the council's homeworld, chaos reigned. Representatives screamed at one another as the broadcast reached them. Some demanded retaliation no matter the cost. Others shouted to let it pass, to save the fleets and avoid ruin. But in the end, the choice was not theirs. It rested in the hands of one admiral, alone in the dark. He stared at the human ship, its weapons glowing faintly, its engines steady. He thought of the recordings, the shattered asteroid, the silence that followed. He thought of his crews waiting for him to decide if they lived or died. His claws tightened, his pride ached, but his fear won. With a heavy breath, he lowered his hand from the command seal. All ships, stand down. The order rippled across the fleet. Weapons dimmed. Fighters pulled back. Missiles powered down. One by one, the lights of war faded, leaving only silence in their place. The warship drifted forward, passing through the broken crescent as though it owned the void. No ship dared to stop it. No ship dared to follow. The human vessel did not speak again. It did not fire again. Simply continued on its path, vanishing slowly into the darkness of space. The message had been sent, and the galaxy had received it. One shot, one demonstration had told them all they needed to know. The humans were not prey. They were not to be tested. And though the fleet remained intact, though no ship had been destroyed, every captain knew the truth. They had lost, not in battle, but in spirit. And the galaxy would never forget the day one human warship forced an armada to bow without a fight. The human warship vanished into the dark, its engines burning faintly until even that glow was gone. For long minutes, the fleet hung in silence, unsure if it was safe to breathe again. Their weapons were still warm, their crews still shaking, their hearts still caught between terror and relief. One ship had been destroyed, yet every captain felt as though they had lost more than a battle. They had lost certainty. They had lost the illusion of power. They had lost the belief that they controlled the galaxy. On the flagship bridge, the Grand Admiral sat frozen in his chair, his claws dug into the armrests, his eyes fixed on the empty space where the warship had disappeared. His mind replayed the moment again and again, the asteroid shattering into dust, the voice echoing through the coms, the calm promise of annihilation. He had faced wars, rebellions, pirate fleets, even the great civil storms of the Council. Faced fear like this, it was not fear of defeat. It was fear of something greater, something untouchable, something that looked at them not as equals, not as enemies, but as children playing with sticks. The fleet drifted apart. Captains whispered to their crews, voices trembling. Some cursed the admiral for standing down. Others quietly thanked him for sparing their lives. But none could deny what they had all seen. A single warship alone had forced an armada to bow. That story would not remain here in the void. It would spread, carried by every shaken pilot, every terrified crew member, every trembling officer. It would travel faster than any engine through words, through fear, through whispers in the dark, by the time the fleet returned to Council space. The story had already begun to grow. On distant outposts, officers swore the warship had fired 2 beams, not 1. On mining colonies, they whispered it had erased not an asteroid, but a moon. On the trade lanes, rumors claimed it carried weapons that could burn entire worlds in a single breath. The truth was enough to terrify, but fear never traveled alone. It carried exaggeration on its back, and the galaxy was hungry for legends. Inside the council chambers, chaos reigned. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over one another. Some demanded war, that humanity must be struck before it grew stronger. Others screamed that peace must be secured at any cost, even surrender if it meant survival. The word human had become a shadow that loomed over every debate, every plan, every whispered council session. No one truly knew who these humans were, where they had come from, or how many warships they possessed. But no one doubted anymore that they were real and that they were dangerous. Merchants altered their routes, fearful of traveling near Earth's rumored sector. Pirates abandoned entire regions, afraid to cross paths with human patrols. Border worlds sent panicked requests for protection, even though no human ship had ever approached them. Fear moved faster than light, reshaping the galaxy before humanity had even raised its voice. Yet among the fear, there was also awe. Soldiers who had once laughed at the idea of Earth now whispered of its warriors with respect. Admirals who had once mocked the idea of human fleets now studied the warship's movements in silence, trying to understand the mind that could build such a weapon. On some worlds, young recruits swore they would one day fight beside humans, not against them. In the shadows, leaders whispered that maybe, just maybe, this new power was the ally they had been waiting for. Meanwhile, far away on Earth, the warship returned to its home dock. It carried no trophies, no wreckage, no signs of victory. But the crew knew what they had accomplished. They had not destroyed the alien fleet. They had not burned worlds. But they had sent a message, one written in fire and silence. Humanity was no longer hidden. Humanity would no longer be ignored. The captain of the warship stood on the bridge, watching Earth rise slowly in the viewport. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of what had been done. He knew the galaxy would remember this day. He knew stories would grow, fears would spread, and whispers would shape entire worlds. And he knew one more truth. The first step had been taken. The galaxy now feared humanity, and fear was a weapon as sharp as any blade. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed forever. No trade meeting, no council vote, no military drill could escape the shadow of the human warship. Fleets were rebuilt, defenses strengthened, alliances forged, not out of trust but out of terror. The balance of power had shifted not by war, not by conquest, but by the presence of a single ship that refused to bow. And so the legend grew. Across the stars, beings told their children of the day they faced a human warship and never forgot. They spoke of the fire that could erase asteroids, of the voice that carried death behind its calm words, of the silence that followed as an entire armada stood down. Some told the story as a warning, others as an inspiration, but all told it with the same unshakable truth. The humans were different. Fear spread across the stars like a new dawn. And in that dawn, humanity had found its place, not as prey, not as newcomers, but as a power that could no longer be ignored. The galaxy would never again look at Earth with dismissive eyes. It would look with caution, with respect, and with fear. Because in the deep void, one memory remained, carved into the minds of all who had seen it, the day a human warship came, spoke, fired once, and made the galaxy bow.